Start using this lockdown coverage that can take away any route on the field that will confuse your opponent, because most people have no idea how to attack this coverage, and it is based around a real coverage that is taking over college football and the NFL. This is going to be an intro into match coverage and a complete breakdown of cover 4 quarters, showing you how you can turn it into the best pass defense in Madden 23. Now, when someone says match coverage, what they mean is a defense that has defenders playing zone, but they are reading receivers, and depending on alignment and route combos, individual defenders can turn into man coverage on receivers and run with them all over the field, while some of the other defenders will play zone. Now, I really believe that match-based schemes are the future of football, and you really need to use them in Madden because they are aggressive pass defenses designed to give you a numbers advantage in coverage. It is excellent at creating double teams on the back end of your coverage, and it is specifically designed to limit the modern passing attacks that are so popular in college and the NFL right now. Also, match coverage is amazing at taking away deep route combos. It can really limit those deep corner routes that are such a problem in Madden, and it can do a great job robbing these crossers and double teaming these players and taking them away. And I honestly believe learning how to use these match coverages is the most fun way to play defense in Madden. This is going to feel like real football, where you have to know your assignment and what different match scheme you should use versus every offense that you come up against. Now, our match coverage game plan is all inspired by the GOAT Nick Saban and his legendary run at Alabama, where he led the Tide to become the greatest dynasty in college football history. Over the past 7 to 8 seasons, the Tide have evolved into a 4-down lineman-based defense with a nickelback on the field that Saban refers to as his star position. Then the Tide run an insanely advanced match coverage scheme that Saban refers to as his cover 7 defenses. This gives him an insane amount of checks and options to answer whatever the offense is trying to do offensively. Today we are going to be breaking down cover 4 quarters, but in the future I will be doing full breakdowns of cover 4 palms, cover 3 match, and when I recommend you should use each one of these coverages. I will also do breakdowns on each of the meta offenses and give you individual match schemes to really limit what those schemes are trying to do. Now, I'm going to leave a link down in the description for this whole Saban defensive scheme, and you can watch everything else that is out for this defensive scheme so far. Now, we are going to be breaking down quarters versus 2x2 balanced sets. Then we are going to touch on 3x1 sets, but I do prefer palms versus those 3x1 looks, and those we'll be breaking down in the next video. So first, when I say 2x2, I mean 2 receivers on each side of the ball, but they're going to have more normal splits. We are not looking at tight formations right now. That will be a whole nother video. Now, this is the base form of cover 7 in Saban's defense, and it would be called cover 7 mod, but because we are playing with our corners off, actually going to be considered cover 7 box. Now, first, let's look at the 2 outside corners. When talking about match coverage, you'll hear me say read 1 to 2 to 3 or read 2 to 1 or anything along those lines. What that refers to is 1 will be the outside receiver on that side of the ball, then it goes in. 2 would be the next receiver in, and then if there is a trip to that side, he would become number 3. So for your outside corner, he is always going to read 1 to 2, and he is going to play what we call mod. This refers to man on demand. This means if number 1 goes vertical up the field, anything 5+ yards, then he is going to turn into man coverage and lock him up wherever he goes. Then if 1 goes shallow, so a hitch or a drag across the field or anything under 5 yards, he is going to look inside to number 2. And if this player goes vertical, like on a corner route or on a seam, and he's going to help the safety and lock down number 2. Then lastly, if number 1 stays shallow, then so does number 2. Then our cornerback is just going to drop out and play deep quarter zone and help on anything coming to his area. Next, we have our 2 high safeties. Now, they are going to read 2 to 1, so the opposite of the corners. So same thing. If 2 goes vertical up the field 5+ yards, then the safety will just man him up and play man coverage all over the field. So that will be crossers, corner routes, seams, anything vertical. But if 2 runs anything shallow, like a drag across the field or hitches up, now the safety is going to look to 1. And if he runs anything vertical to the middle of the field, like a post or a crosser, then he is going to bracket number 1 with the corner and help take away any deep routes that the receiver will run to the middle of the field. Then the other thing that can happen if 2 stays shallow, and then number 1, if he gets vertical upfield but is not cutting into the middle of the field, or if number 1 just breaks it down and stays shallow, then our safety on this side will be totally free and he's just going to be looking for work. So he can help on any crosser or anything coming from the opposite side of the field. Next, we have quarter flats. Here, their job will be to jam number 2 as he gets vertical. Then he will take the first player going to the flat. It could be number 1 hitching up. If he sees that, he's going to run out to it. Or it could be the running back going to the flat right away. Now, if 2 doesn't go vertical but goes straight out, then the quarter flat will just go to the flat right away with number 2. The only time they will get vertical up the field is on wheel routes. So if number 2 runs a wheel from the slot, they are actually going to turn into man coverage and run with the wheel. Or if the running back runs a wheel out of the backfield, then the exact same thing, our quarter flat will turn into man coverage and run with him up the field. Now for our 3 receiver hook in the middle of the field. This is going to be mostly a free defender looking to help on any routes coming over the middle. He does not have a super set role in 2x2 sets in Madden. He's just going to be looking for work over the middle, help on crossers, help on anything attacking the middle of the field. But one job he does have is he will take the second player to the flats. So if the running back goes right to the flats at the snap, the quarter flat to that side will take him. Then if there is another receiver from the other side of the field going to the flat, now the 3 receiver hook will take that route. But now quickly, let's look at 3x1. But remember, this isn't how I prefer to play. I like palms better versus 3x1, but this is definitely info you should know in case you do want to play quarters against trips. 3x1 just means 3 receivers to one side and a solo receiver backside. Now looking at trips, first the safety, the corner, and the quarter flat on the trip side are going to play the exact same rules as 2x2, so I am not going to touch on them here, but they are going to play exactly the same as we just went over. But now let's look where it's different. First, we have the backside safety on the solo receiver side. His job is to take number 3 on the trip side if he goes vertical. So any route 5+ yards, any streak, any post, any crosser, this is his responsibility. So as you can see, this is a pretty tough cover. He's pretty far away. Now, if number 3 stays shallow, then this safety's job is to look to the backside solo receiver, and if he goes vertical and in, then he is going to bracket with the corner. Otherwise, he is free just looking for work. Then we have our solo cornerback. Now, this is how he is going to play if the receiver is split out wide, not in line like trips tight end. Match coverage is going to treat that player different, but that will break down in our trips tight end video. So here our solo cornerback is going to play what we call Meg. This means man everywhere he goes. So it doesn't matter what route this receiver runs, he can run shallow, deep, anything, our cornerback is going to lock him up. Then for our quarter flat to the solo receiver side, he has a man coverage on the running back wherever he goes if he leaves the backfield. Even if he runs to the wide side of the field, then our quarter flat is going to take him. Then if the running back stays in the block, then he is just going to become a normal flat defender. Then lastly, we have our 3 receiver hook. And here his job is to play number 3. And if he gets vertical up the field, he actually wants to get underneath of him and take him away and pass him off to the safety. Then he is just going to come off and play his normal 3 receiver hook over the middle of the field. So that is how quarters works versus 3x1. But like I said, be ready for the next video when I break down palms and my go-to defense on how to shut down trips. Now, if you want to unlock a ton more for this Saban defensive scheme, you need to check out my website, Scheme Kings. Up today is a crazy in-depth video breaking down how you can use cover 4 quarters to lock up Gun Bunch. I show you the exact checks you need to take away all of its go-to plays, and this is going to give those bunch users so many issues. Also on the site, I have my ultimate mobile QB offense where I break down some of the best running quarterbacks ever and show you how you can use them in Madden 23. Now, if you want to check out Scheme Kings, I will leave a link down in the description below. And because I think this defense is going to help so many people, I want as many of you as possible to be able to use the full scheme. So use code Saban at checkout for 50% off your first month. Now, before we actually hop into a game and run quarters, we want to look at our coaching adjustments, and you actually need to turn your match coverage on, or when you call cover 4 quarters, it is just going to play normal drop zone coverage. Then for another coaching adjustment, I like to turn my baseline on. This just helps us disguise our defensive calls. Now for this Saban match defense, we are going to be running it at a big nickel over G in the Raiders playbook. But I want to be clear here, guys, all of the match rules we went over today are going to be the same in any formation you use. Now quickly, I want to go over the adjustments I use when I play quarters against 2x2 sets. First, I always manually change my quarter flats into hard flats. I think quarter flats are kind of a waste in Madden. I don't need to worry about jamming number 2. I just prefer to get my flat defender out there right away and let him lock it down. Now, the only time you might run into issues here is if they run a wheel. Now, a hard flat won't match this wheel and run with them up the field. So if your opponent does start running wheels and hitting some of them deep down the field, then just leave your quarter flats on the field and don't put them in hard flats. Then another adjustment you can do is if it's 3rd and long or really deep down in distance, and you can shade up and put curl flats flats on the field. This won't turn off your match coverage, but now your flats will play further back and help get underneath corner routes and some of the other deeper routes. This is also going to make your 3-receiver hook play deeper down the field and sit back on some of those deeper crossers over the middle. Then the other thing I do is I always use the wide side safety. Now you have to be aware of all his responsibilities here, but I love playing this spot because if number 2 on my side stays shallow, I am completely free in this spot to pick up anyone I see coming open. Especially if they're running crossers to the wide side of the field, I can rob those routes and help take them away. Now let's look at some in-game examples of how effective this coverage is. Now one of the best things about this quarters defense against 2x2 looks is how well we can double team deep routes down the field. If one of the players stays shallow, now we can bracket the other receiver going deep. This is going to cause a ton of problems for the defense and allow you to outnumber receivers down the field, get a ton of knockouts deep, and it's going to lead to a ton of interceptions when we are outnumbering them at the catch point. This defense is all about allowing our players to make plays in coverage by putting them in the most advantageous spots possible. So our corner will be in off coverage with help to the inside so they can sit on the vertical routes, and as long as you have size on these outside players, are really going to do a good job of limiting those big plays down the field. And then as a user here, you have a ton of freedom. If number 2 does go vertical on your side, you will be able to user him the whole way, and if they want to test your user, then you can make a play on the ball, and I get so many user picks in this spot. But then if your number 2 player shuts down and stays shallow, then you just have complete freedom to help all over the field. Then because we do have hard flats on the field, we really want to give them nothing quick and easy to the flats. These guys are going to play super aggressive underneath and jump a ton of routes. The goal here is to make them hold the ball, and then this is where our 4-man pass rush will come into play. The fact we can lock up and take away their deep crossers and corner routes without playing zone drops allows us to rush 4, and with how good the pass rush is in this year's game, you are going to make it super tough for the QB and rack up a ton of sacks. Now, quarters isn't perfect, and how we set up our defense, there are some ways you can get beat if you aren't careful. First is, as a user, if you fall asleep or if you get too aggressive on something else that isn't your responsibility, then you can really get beat over the top. So you have to be sure the player you are responsible isn't getting vertical before you help somewhere else, or it can be 7 going the other way. Then if they have all 4 of their receivers going deep, now we have no double teams, and this is basically going to be one-on-ones across the board. So now it is basically straight man, and if the receiver gets a step on your DB on a crosser or a post, then it can be a pretty big play for them. Now quarters is also an excellent run defense. We will have 9 players in run fit, so it is very good at getting your safeties going downhill and making big plays. And in big nickel over G, we have a really solid 4-man front that isn't easy to move or open holes against, and I really don't worry about any of these shotgun type offenses running the ball on this defense. Now this quarters defense is going to do an amazing job of locking up those high powered offenses. But to make this scheme work to its full potential, you need to make sure you are using the right personnel on defense. You also have to have all the right abilities on your players, and you need to understand the background of this whole defense. So to learn all of that, you need to check out this video right here.